Corpus Edax is exactly the kind of hidden gem I love to find, something that speaks directly to my interests in a way nothing else is currently doing. In this case, it's an immersive sim mixed with a first-person brawler that's one of the funnier games I've played in a while. You wouldn't know it from the concept, though. The world of Corpus Edax is dystopian science fiction. In a cyberpunk city built on another planet after humanity left the Earth a resource-exhausted husk, we find our protagonist awakened from their cryosleep pilgrimage and assigned a dead-end job by the authoritarian powers that be. After a curious dream where you're visited by a supposedly dead man who used to live in your assigned apartment, however, you fall in with the local resistance group, trying to topple the evil overlords what run the place. It's all stock sci-fi adventure concepts, and Corpus Edax's writing is perhaps its biggest weakness. But we're not really here for any of that. We're here to punch and kick people in creative or hilarious ways, and luckily, the game excels at that. Corpus Edax really feels inspired by Dark Messiah of Might and Magic, with its emphasis on melee combat where the environment is your primary weapon. Left clicks are punches, right clicks are kicks, and you can chain taps and holds in different patterns to execute different moves. Heavy moves can break blocks or send enemies flying, but light taps are safer when there's an opening, and are a more sure way of dealing actual damage. The system takes some getting used to, but it's quite enjoyable when it finally clicks. Battles can be won with just your bare hands, but it's so much more fun to just rip some pipes off the walls or smash a chair over the heads of your enemies. It's a game about scrappy, physics-based, skin-of-your-teeth brawls, not stylish and elegant swordplay full of parries. Breaking beer bottles and then chucking them at people, or throwing a hammer at your enemy's head to knock them out are standard tactics. Heck, this is the kind of game where after you've injected yourself with a health syringe and used all of the medicine within, you can throw the syringe like a shuriken. The enemies in Corpus Edax use a mixture of physics-based movement and canned animations. Punches and kicks direct their limbs in preset ways, but once airborne or sent to the floor, they flop about like ragdolls as they try to get back up. And the results are just delightful physical comedy. This next clip where I trigger some monster infighting is a little long, but I think it's great for selling people on the game's physical comedy. Now, it is probably worth pointing out that Corpus Edax doesn't really make a great first impression, unfortunately. The game's stat system is such that you're pretty weak in the first level or two, especially if you invest in skills that aren't directly related to combat. This is doubly true for the first combat encounter you're forced to have, a local gang member demanding payment outside of your assigned home. There really isn't a way to easily sneak by him, and there aren't exactly a plethora of weapons out sitting around to use to help you. You can use some skill checks to get him off your back, but in my first run I put all my points into nerd stuff so I couldn't use beefy muscles or sex appeal to dissuade him. And it's honestly one of only a handful of times the game manages to do this sort of role-playing answer to a problem. It is, above all, a game about brawling. I had to break into the gang's hideout one floor below my apartment and use the weapons there to clean out those guys before taking a pipe and a piece of wood from furniture back upstairs to politely disagree with the gentleman who wouldn't let me into my own house. Once you've invested some skill points in combat though, the game really starts to shine. There's something about using a powerful kick to knock physics-based enemies back that's just incredibly satisfying, and there are plenty of plate glass windows to kick them through and precarious ledges to kick them from. You can tell the original vision for the game had a little bit more immersive sim style back and forth than the final title ended up being. The first 3 or so missions all take place around a central city hub. The Resistance base is in the sewers under a dilapidated industrial ruin, and from there you'll break into a gang hideout or into a nightclub. Along the way you may find caches that have passwords for the storage facility back in the city hub if you're looking for extra loot. But after about the 3rd mission, the game shifts and becomes quite linear. This is actually to the game's benefit. Corpus Edax is designed as a series of combat encounters to navigate, with side areas granting limited use items or small amounts of experience. Backtracking across the static city never really felt particularly rewarding, especially since nothing new really opened up. If anything, making the game linear increases its focus on its strengths, making the back half of the game more enjoyable than the first, because you won't get lost for 5 minutes looking for your next objective, and that just screws up the pacing of looking for your next fight. Corpus Edax also has what feels like an intentionally restrictive save system to keep up the pressure. You have one autosave that updates as you make progress through the game, and one save file that you can use at any time. It doesn't prevent save scumming. You can absolutely still redo every fight until you execute it perfectly. But it does mean that every time you finally beat a room or combat arena, you have to decide if you're satisfied with your performance without knowing what challenges lie ahead. Yeah, you beat the 3 guards up, but you spent your 1 med hypo you were carrying. Should we try again, or proceed with that resource missing and hope we can replace it? Like most friction in games, I imagine it will alienate as many people as it excites. But I think it works well here given the tight scope, comparatively short length of the game, and emphasis on brawls that eat up resources rather than choreographed dances meant to be perfectly parried all the way through. It's a game about getting punched in the face and rolling on. At the end of the day, Corpus Edax is a janky game made mostly by one guy, and its grandest possible version probably hasn't been realized. But it's also some of the hardest I've laughed at game combat in a long time, and kicking mooks through a plate glass window or timing an uppercut just right so that the enemy falls back on their ass is just, it's so satisfying. I've played a lot of immersive sims lately, and I've played a lot of boomer shooters lately, but I've not played anything quite like this, and if it sounds up your alley, I would strongly recommend it.